Okay, everybody. So, we start this part 1 off when Nezuko is walking down the hall of the middle school as she's searching for her brother because orientation's gonna start soon. As she then finds her brother Izuku clinging onto this girl and saying, "Please marry me. Please. I'll do anything. Please." As she's just like, "Please stop. Stop it, please, weirdo." As Nezuko bonks him and just says, "No, don't do that." As Izuku is knocked out. As the girl says, "Thank you so much," as she walks over to where orientation was. And Izuku's dragged over there. And yeah, they end up being a little late. So yeah, we sim all the way forward because middle school's boring. Anyway, we fast forward all the way to the last day of middle school, when all of them are packing up their things for the last period. When they finally get into the class, the teacher says, "Well, everybody, I have for what you want to be with the rest of your career." Just kidding. I know you all want to go to the hero course, as everyone starts flashing their quirks off. As Izuku just stands there, along with his sister. I mean, sitting there. As you'd imagine. And Bakugo does the same speech, as then the teacher pipes up and says, "Nezuko and Izuku, don't you two want to go to UA?" That's what the form says. As Bakugo stops his ranting and looks back at the two, as Izuku just waves. And Nezuko just looks adorable, doesn't it? Anyway, that's all that happens for that interaction. And once the both of them are going home, at least, Izuku finally realizes, "Oh, wait, Nezuko, we need to go quick. I'm pretty sure I left something at the arcade," as they go down an underpass, as the slime villain gets behind them, as Izuku turns back and says, "Nezuko," as she turns around and says, "Oh my gosh," as the both of them get out their swords, as Izuku says, "I won't let us lose," as he ties his hair back. As they begin slashing at the slime villain, but it's not doing anything. It's only frying the little slime that's attacking. But that's when Izuku steps back and says, "Breathing style, lightning form, flashing light," as he zooms past just the slime villain, and cuts right through him, as the entirety of the slime villain's body erupts into electricity. As the slime villain is sitting there getting fried by the electricity, trying to pat itself off, All Might pops out of the sewers and says, "That was rough. I hope I don't have to do that again," as he looks at the slime villain and says, "Take this, you monster," as All Might reels his hand back and throws it, as a massive gust of air goes through the entire underpass, as sending the entire sludge villain splattering onto the floor. As Izuku sees All Might and we'll say Inko living in the mountains, Izuku and Nezuko get their swords out, as Izuku, with his lightning style, does his vanishing move, as All Might says, "You're fast, kid," as Izuku says, "Uh-huh, as All Might says, why is the world turning? As here's a twist. All Might is beheaded. As Izuku says, well, that's that. Couldn't let it risk anyone hurting my precious Nezuko. As they continue walking towards the arcade. And eventually they get Izuku's item and return home. When they hear news that All Might was killed. As Izuku says, who's All Might, Mom? As Inka says, oh, just some hero. It was reported that he was killed by someone with a sword. Do you know anything about it? As Izuku says, no, I don't. I don't know what this All Might looks like. As their TV was more so just a radio. And the world, in reality, in the city was devastated by All Might's death. And with All Might's death came the loss of One for All. So, a couple hours later, Izuku turns on his radio to hear SOS warnings about villain uprisings, especially one called All for One. Because, without One for All, there's nothing to stop him. So, yeah. Endeavor is the strongest hero currently. And, he can't do anything against All for One. So, yeah, he kind of just gets destroyed. Anyway. We continue the series. And Izuku and everyone else continues on. As Izuku and Nezuko train for a couple of years because all the hero schools have disbanded because that city is completely taken over. And most of Japan is under villain ruling, with All for One at the top. And for the last couple of years, Izuku and Nezuko have been training non-stop to defeat the villains. On their last spar before they went to attack the leader, All for One, they had one last spar. As the both of them get their sword out and says, you ready? As they both say yes. As Izuku and Nezuko immediately use their flash move as the both of them duck under it. As they begin zooming with their swords and just teleport slashing, I guess. As they're both fighting at immense speeds, extremely fast. Nezuko gets a cut off on Izuku's hand as Izuku begins trying to get a hit on her, but she plays a little more defensive and catches him off guard as she's about to do a finishing blow. Izuku parries it and smacks her on the thigh with his sword and cuts her thigh open. But, it's not a deep cut. But Nezuko says, I lost. As Izuku says, I'm happy you knew how deep that could have been. As the entire sword was past her leg, and he could have just cut it off. Both of the legs, if it was a real fight. As they then start exploring for the criminal boss. After about a year of them exploring and training, they are around 20 now. And Izuku and Uraraka find a man sitting in a chair with a very, very mechanical head with tons of henchmen around him. As All for One says, attack. As all the thugs begin attacking, but Izuku says, I'll get this, sis. As he says, lightning style. what's it called? He just hits fast. Yeah, he just cuts their heads all off. Oh yeah, it was let me think. Okay. Well, it's whenever like an electricity moves onto a target that's like just happens to be next to it. Like say I'm touching something that's being electrocuted. That's also now I'm also being electrocuted. Is that? I don't know what it's called, guys. I'm sorry. Anyway, as All for One says, impossible. Those are my strongest men. As his right-hand man says, don't worry. As Dr. Ujiko presses a button, as 30 high-end Nomu come out, as Nezuko and Izuku and not Zenitsu. Nezuko and Izuku begin fighting off the high-ends, as Izuku and Nezuko at the same time say, massive hurricane, electricity movement, as they work in a sun and moon movement, as they cut all of the Nomu's heads off, as all of them are fried with the electricity of the sword. As Izuku gets a glance at All for One with his cane walking off, Izuku says, I won't let you get away, as he unsheathed his sword once again, and with his flash technique, cuts All for One into two, and says, your reign is over, my lord, as he looks over to Dr. Ujiko and stabs him, and says, I can't let this happen again, as he slices and dices Ujiko. As All for One begins regenerating so that he's, not dying, All for One looks back to see Izuku stabbing him through the heart and says, you're the strongest villain yet. You were so easy. Well, time to begin rebuilding. As Nezuko and Izuku step out of the darkened building and say, this is it, Nezuko. Now we can have a great life. As that's what we'll be leaving off for part 1, everybody. And yeah, this is Keto signing off. Goodbye.